Woj is going to join me in a second, and we're going to discuss the blockbuster trade from last night. Also coming up, with Anthony Davis and LeBron both extending their deals with the Lakers, are there more titles on the way? The players will chime in on that in just a bit. First, though, welcoming in our senior NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. You broke this Russell Westbrook, John Wall trade story last night. How did this deal come about?
Rachel, it came together quickly yesterday afternoon. Rafael Stone, Houston's GM, Tommy Shepard, Washington's GM, hadn't really had a conversation about this potential trade since right before the draft. Thad Fouché from Wasserman, who is Russell Westbrook's agent, helped to get those two talking again yesterday. And essentially, they knew what the deal would be, which would be 1-for-1, Westbrook and Wall. And they got the draft protections down. They were going to do 1 first-round pick up in the future, 2023 protected, and they got a deal done there within just a few hours. Pretty rare for a deal of this magnitude to come together so quickly, but they were on the trade call within 3 or 4 hours from first talking yesterday.
Wow. And of course, everybody wants to know about the dominoes that follow it, right? So what does this Westbrook trade mean for James Harden and his future status with the Rockets?
The Rockets really don't know. They're hopeful that a healthy John Wall, a John Wall who regains his all-star form, is somebody that James Harden's going to want to play with and stay longer term. And they've made some other moves, certainly roster-wise in Houston. They got Stephen Silas is their new coach. But the one thing that the Rockets have going for them, it's a little different than Washington, is they have Harden under contract for at least 2 more years. And that buys them some time to try to get this moving in the right direction. They don't want to trade James Harden. They've never really backed off of that. And so they want to give it time. John Wall's been out of the league for 2 years. And as good as maybe he's looked in pickup games in the offseason, that's not NBA basketball, and you would imagine it's going to take some time, and then some time learning to play with James Harden. But for Houston, I think for both teams, they felt it was a trade they had to make. Each point guard wanted to be in the other place, and it's hard to win in this league with guys who just don't want to be in town anymore.
You made me think of something, Woj, when you mentioned the agents who were involved in the Westbrook-Wall deal. James Harden still doesn't have an agent right now. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Does that influence sort of how brokering gets done in the NBA if there's no agent involved?
It's a good question. And he has like a business manager. He has a family that works alongside with him. But yeah, he doesn't have a formal agent anymore. And, Rob Pelinka was his agent previously before Rob went on to run the Lakers. But listen, he's made it clear to them where he stands. That's that he wants a trade. He wants a trade to Brooklyn. That's not in the offing right now. Listen, he has been in Houston, the center of that organization, both on the court and off the court for years. And so they want to find a way to keep him, and they'll see how this Wall experiment goes. They know there's risk in this trade. Again, this is a player coming off serious injuries, out for 2 years. They're hopeful that a healthy John Wall is someone that James Harden decides he wants to play with, but they don't know for sure.
Well, you mentioned Rob Pelinka, so let's move on to the Lakers because, boy, Rob Pelinka had quite an exceptional offseason. This morning, you also broke the news of Anthony Davis taking
round pick and Russell Westbrook goes to the Wizards. Jalen, when you look at it through the prism of James Harden, who I'm sure was consulted on this, why do you think they went for Wall?
I think they went for Wall because him and Russ are similar in a lot of ways, but they're going to be vastly different in certain ways. In particular, on the floor, John Wall is going to be a guy that can be effective without the ball. I know that he's a 20-10 and 2 steal guy, but he's going to be able to still make plays as a secondary playmaker versus Russ and James both need an isolation scenario in order to perform at their maximum. But here's what I want to also acknowledge. I know there's a lot of podcasts in the game. I get it. We've been doing this 10 years. As a matter of fact, Jacoby, when we were doing it, there was no Spotify. There was no Apple. Okay, we was doing this thing on YouTube and on Periscope. And if you follow Jalen and Jacoby over the last 10 years, this trade don't surprise you. It's broken news to you. This is broken news to you. We talked about that time and time again. When John Wall was returning from injury, and then he was pictured in Brooklyn doing some unsavory things as it related to the organization, the ownership and management made up their mind that he had played his last basketball game there. Him and Bradley Beal, while both talented all-star level performers, still never meshed as a duo. So for James, I understand. You bring in Wall, you bring in Boogie, you're trying to do what you can to still be a playoff team because you know Harden's still going to perform at an MVP level. But for Russ, like I told you, when he got traded, it not only was going to be to the East, but it was going to be a team that did not make the playoffs. Yep. And why is that important? Because now their fan base is energized. You know that Russ going to show up and bring it on a nightly basis, teaming with Bradley Beal. And are they the best backcourt in the NBA? Are they the best backcourt in the NBA?
Interesting.
Okay. All right. So that's what they're going to have going on in Washington. And so they're now going to be a team that we talk about. They're also going to be a team that will make the playoffs this year. And so this is a win-win for both sides.
Well, I also want to say this about Houston. When D'Antoni left and when Daryl Morey left, they left behind sort of a broken roster, but I really like what they have done in the wake of those two leaving, because it's not only did they bring in Boogie, not only did they bring in John Wall, a gentleman that you're familiar with that's not a household name, Christian Wood. Christian Wood is a legit contributor, and he's a big. So we don't have P.J. Tucker guarding centers anymore. Christian Wood is only familiar to those that live in Michigan because no one's watching the Pistons on League Pass. But he is a true contributor, and they've got Boogie, they've got Christian Wood, they've got Wall, they've got Harden, they've still got Eric Gordon, they've still got Tucker. Like, the Rockets are kind of revamped, and I like what they have done. But of course, you can't talk about John Wall without saying if he stays healthy, because we have not seen John Wall play basketball in 2 years. So if he's the old John Wall, it's going to go well.
I suffered through the years and shed so many tears. Oh, man, I hate to see Christian Wood go. And I'm glad you brought him up. That's smart basketball analysis. You paying attention to League Pass, dog, because Christian Woods can ball. He can play on the perimeter. He can drive it and make a play for himself. He can block shots. He can rebound. And I just want to go on wax and say this. And I love Daryl Morey just like all of the other media fanboys. The Houston GM has done a better job than Daryl Morey already. What do you think about that?
Interesting.
The current GM has done better than Daryl Morey already. And here's what I mean. His outstanding move clearly was bringing in James Harden. Like, that's outstanding. The other thing to help unlock James Harden was to bring in Mike D'Antoni and put the ball in his hands. Those were outstanding moves. The other moves, not so outstanding. You remember Dwight Howard ran with them? Or Chris Paul? Or now Russell Westbrook? You remember them starting a micro ball, like you just mentioned, where P.J. Tucker was 6'5", starting at center? The same team that lived by